The media coverage for the Vietnam War was harmful to U.S. institutions. That's one of the reasons why we left Vietnam. If we controlled the media, we would have stayed in Vietnam until we saw it through. Media pressure was one of the reasons we left. Look at how unpopular the Iraq War became. You don't think Obama wanted to take a more active role in the Middle East? He couldn't because the American public hates everything in the Middle East.
Destiny has a complete meltdown after Andrew Tate obliterates him live on stream. Andrew Tate comes in swinging, setting up a debate that isn't just about media control. It's about power, influence, and who really calls the shots. Destiny, on the other hand, seems to think that everything is just free and open, as if the West isn't just as invested in controlling narratives as any other country. Let's go through this and point out where Andrew Tate completely dismantles Destiny's argument piece by piece.
Destiny, I want to understand your worldview, because you and I have a different worldview, it seems, especially on girlfriends, etc. But we won't go down that path. Do you think it would be prudent and professional for a country to allow its state broadcaster, which speaks to its populace, to report whatever it wanted and whatever it discovered without any kind of moderation or input, even if it was directly adverse to the goals and aims of the national security of said country or the military-industrial complex of that country? Do you think they would allow the state broadcaster to just report whatever it wanted fairly without anyone telling them what to say or any narratives to hold, even if it's directly counter to the interests of very powerful entities within that nation? Do you believe that we operate in a world that fair?
Yes,
because
confidence is a valuable thing. And if your country doesn't trust you, doesn't trust the media, if it doesn't trust the leaders, and if you've got ways to hold them accountable, like via voting, then yeah, if you around with your population and people find out, you're going to be held accountable for it. Arguably, that's why Trump won his election. You know, you can say that like, oh, well, the media lies to everybody and everybody lies to everybody. That might be true. Fine. Then why the should we believe anything any of you guys say, right? At that point, you're in an epistemic, nihilistic black hole of nothingness where you can't believe anybody.
Dustin, I have a question. I'm curious.
Okay, go, Andrew.
I'm curious. Do you believe that in China, the state broadcaster can just broadcast whatever it wants and whatever it discovers, or do you believe it has to work within an official narrative from the government?
In China, I think they probably have to work with official narratives within the government. This media probably works close with the state.
And what about in Russia?
Yes. For publications like RT, yes.
Saudi?
I don't know as much about Saudi media, but that would be my assumption. It's a total monarchy, yeah.
But in the West, not at all, 0%, right?
Well, it depends on the country you're talking about. Like the BBC gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. PBS gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. I think in general in the West, I don't think the media tends to operate at the behest of the state. Whereas like in monarchies or dictatorships, you tend to operate more with what the state is telling you to do. Yes.
Well, we could ask why you'd get state funding without state direction. That's one question. But
that right there is Andrew Tate hitting Destiny with the real question. Like, come on, you really think governments are just handing out money to media organizations with no strings attached? That's like believing a casino gives you free drinks just because they like you. Andrew Tate is exposing the fact that even in the West, media is still controlled. It's just done in a more sophisticated behind-the-scenes way. Meanwhile, Destiny is trying to dance around the obvious, acting like state funding doesn't come with influence.
So
because of legislation from Congress that authorizes state funding? I mean, it's not really a huge conspiracy.
Of course, yeah, they just give money for nothing. Yeah, fine.
Money for I'm sorry, do you think the most wealthy broadcasters work for PBS and NPR?
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I
know you don't.
I want to try and get to the end of the point, especially because I'm driving. So do you think that would allow a country to be competitive, considering that you need to have narrative control over your populace? And that we now know, and everyone in the West accepts, that China has narrative control over its populace via the state broadcaster, as does Russia, as does Saudi Arabia, as do all these other countries. And that having a news broadcasting apparatus which told the truth, even if it's against national security interests, would not allow you to be competitive as a nation state. Do you think that we're going to allow that to happen just because we care about truth so much?
No, because the West doesn't run the world because they dominate the narrative. The West runs the world because they dominate it militarily and economically. People don't like the United States because we've got the most bought and paid for media. They like the United States because we have the strongest navy that guarantees the most free passage through water. Because when the Houthis start firing missiles at people, it's U.S. destroyers that show up and save the waterways. They like the United States because we are a massive trading partner. We have the highest GDP in the world at this point, and we buy and sell goods like crazy. That's why people like us, not because we poison our media, but because we actually put out good results. You can't control the media. You can't media frame the way out of like horrible participation in a world economy. You just have to like actually be able to put up the numbers.
No, I don't think you understood the point I'm asking, because America as a country is in competition with other nation states, right?
No, but we don't compete on who can control the narrative. That's shit you do on Twitter and YouTube. We compete on who has the highest number of exports. We compete on who can facilitate like the largest like multilateral trade deals. We compete on who can guarantee safe passage through waterways. When people start blowing each other up, whose military is going to show up to make sure that your ships are safe? Those are the things that we compete on.
Cool, understand. So you think that America has no vested interest in controlling the narratives that its own population believes in, although the CIA spends basically unlimited money ensuring that vested interests are installed in every other nation state around the world.
If you
they
think
don't care about their own at all.
Yeah.
They don't care about what Americans think at all. They just care about all the other countries think.
And there it is. Andrew Tate just landed a clean hit. Destiny is out here talking about how America wins through economics and military strength, but completely ignores the fact that controlling the narrative is part of that dominance. I mean, yeah, sure, America doesn't have propaganda if you ignore Hollywood, the media, big tech, and government-funded think tanks. Tate is exposing the double standard. America will manipulate the rest of the world, but magically wouldn't do the same to its own people. Come on, Destiny.
If you think the CIA spends unlimited money, it's because you don't know what unlimited money looks like, and you have no idea what the scale is between like CIA spending and spending of companies like Facebook or Apple or Microsoft or Amazon. Like, if you guys at least were to come on and say things like, I think that all of our foreign policy is being ran by the people that control like Apple and Facebook, that would at least make sense. But by companies that are worth, you know, like tens of billions or like $100 billion, no, absolutely not. And also, no, the reputational hit you would take in a democracy when you elect your leaders and people catch you lying about stuff or fabricating stories or controlling the media. No, I don't think you.
Them lying. Oh, we never called them lying.
Is this supposed to be a destination?
Nobody ever said. Hold on. Nobody ever said. Nobody ever said they never. Nobody ever said. Nobody
influence other populations, but they have no interest at all in influencing the minds of their own populace. No, they just care about trying to influence everybody else's with their democracy and all the garbage they're doing when they're pushing it. And you're saying they don't control the narrative, which is also another rabbit hole we need to go down to.
I mean, technically, your story isn't even contradictory, even if I let you have that, because technically Americans don't really give a what happens in other countries as much as their own. So you could get away with influencing other countries more than your own. Yeah, of course. But the reality is that like if you get caught doing these lies, you pay huge repercussions for it. Like a lot of the country's politics
for COVID. What have they paid for COVID? What have they paid for the Vietnam War? What have they paid for the weapons of mass destruction
the media coverage for the Vietnam War was harmful to U.S. institutions. That's one of the reasons why we left Vietnam. If we controlled the media, we would have stayed in Vietnam until we saw it through. Media pressure was one of the reasons we left. Look at how unpopular the Iraq War became. You don't think Obama wanted to take a more active role in the Middle East? He couldn't, because the American public hates everything in the Middle East after the Iraq War. What are you talking about? Yeah, American public heavily influences our capability of operating in different theaters of war. After Iraq and Afghanistan, we have no appetite for it.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty obvious what happened here. Andrew Tate set the stage, asked the right questions, and forced Destiny to expose the flaws in his own argument. Destiny tried to act like media in the West is just a beacon of truth and transparency, but Andrew Tate completely tore that apart. Whether it's state funding, intelligence agencies, or corporate interests, the idea that Western media is some neutral, unbiased entity is laughable. At the end of the day, Andrew Tate showed that power isn't just about money and military. It's about controlling what people believe. And Destiny, well, he just couldn't keep up.